I stopped at a bar I'd passed 100 times and never entered. Low light, wood that had been worn smooth by decades of elbows, music playing softly, like it didn't want to interrupt anyone's thoughts. That's when I saw her. She wasn't trying to be seen. No pona, no nervous glances. Just sitting there, hands folded loosely around a glass she hadn't touched in a while. Dark, hair loose, pale skin that caught the light in a way that felt intentional even if it wasn't. She looked settled, like someone who already knew how the night would end. She didn't smile when she noticed me looking. That should have been the first warning. Instead, she met my eyes and held them, not challenging, not flirtatious. Curious, as if she was checking something off a list. When she finally spoke, she didn't ask my name. She sighed. Long day. Her voice was soft. Calm. Close.
I nodded.
She took a slow sip of her drink, then said something I still think about. Same. We didn't talk about work, or familias, or anything that mattered. We talked around things. Music, places we'd never go back to. Moments that almost changed everything. She listened more than she spoke. When she did speak, it was measured, like she was choosing the exact words she wanted me to remember. At some points he leaned in slightly. Not enough to touch, enough to suggest it. You don't seem like someone who does this often, she said. Dois what? Talk to strangers, like they might disappear. I laughed quietly. When I finally asked her name, she paused. Clara, she said, but tonight, that's not important. That should have ended it. Instead, I asked her what was important. She looked at me for a long moment, then said, this doesn't go anywhere. It doesn't mean anything. And tomorrow, we don't pretend it might have. One night. That was the rule. She said it like a kindness. Her place was close. Too close. To feel coincidental. The lights inside were low, warm, inviting in a way that felt rehearsed but comforting. She hung her coat carefully, set her keys down in the same place she always did. I noticed things like that. You notice routines when someone doesn't explain them. We didn't rush. There was no urgency, only a quiet pull, like gravity slowly doing its work. When Wiki said it was unhurried, exploratory, as if she was confirming something she already suspected. Her hand rested against my chest, fingers spread, feeling my breathing change. She whispered, almost to herself, still, just one night. I believed her. That was my mistake. Later, lying beside her, I realized something strange. She wasn't asleep. Her eyes were open, staring at the ceiling, calm as ever. I asked if she was okay. She didn't answer right away. Her fingers kept moving, tracing slow, meaningless patterns against my arm like she was rehearsing something she'd done many times before. Tense aside, almost casually. You want to stay? It wasn't a question. I told her I could. I told her I didn't have to work early. I told her whatever felt easiest to say in that moment. She smiled, not warmly, not coldly. Knowingly. That's not what I meant. No clothes on the floor. No glass by the sink. No sign that two people had shared the space. Except for one thing. On the nightstand, placed neatly beside my phone, was a single slip of paper. Folded once, my name written on it. In her handwriting, it didn't say goodbye. It didn't say thank you. It said, you promised you wouldn't look for me. I stared at it longer than I should have. I didn't remember making that promise. At work, nothing felt real. Screens glowed too brightly. Voices sounded distant, like they were coming from another room. I checked my phone more times than I could justify. No missed calls. No unknown numbers. Whose silenci? By the afternoon, I'd convinced myself it was done. One night, exactly as she said, that's when Maya noticed something was wrong. You look like you didn't sleep, she said, sitting across from me during lunch. I slept, I replied. She raised an eyebrow. That's not what I meant. Maya had always been good at reading me. Too good. I didn't tell her everything. I told her enough to make it sound harmless. A woman, I said. Just a night. Maya didn't smile. Instead, she asked, does she have dark hair? The question landed heavier than it should have. How did you... And did she tell you not to make it mean anything? I stared at her. Maya's expression tightened, not surprised, but concerned. You're not the first person I've heard say that, she said quietly. She told me about a guy from her old job. Different city, different bar. Same story. A woman who appeared suddenly, promised nothing, left without a trace. He spent months trying to figure out if she was real, Maya said. He said the worst part wasn't missing her. I asked what was. It was realizing how easily she'd gotten inside his head. That night, I went back to the bar. I don't know why. Habit. Maybe. Or hope. She wasn't there. But someone else was watching me. A man, older than me, sitting alone near the end of the counter. He looked worn, like sleep had been optional for a long time. When I walked past him, he spoke without turning his head. She told you it was just one night. Primera stopped. Slowly, he faced me. You didn't listen, he continued. None of us ever do. My mouth went dry. You know her? I asked. It gave a thin, humorless smile. I knew who I thought she was. He stood, leaving money on the bar, then leaned in close enough that I could smell stale coffee on his breath. If she ever tells you she doesn't stay, he said, believe her. Then he walked out into the night, and I realized something I hadn't allowed myself to consider before. Clara hadn't disappeared. She'd simply moved on. After that night, nothing felt accidental anymore. Every quiet moment seemed louder. Every empty space felt intentional. I began replaying details I hadn't cared about before, the way she folded her coat, the pause before she said my name, how she spoke like someone finishing a thought she'd started long ago. I told myself it was normal, that people linger in your head sometimes, but Clara didn't linger. I started returning to the bar. Not every night. That would have felt desperate, just often enough to pretend it was coincidence. Same stool. Same time. Same low music. I watched the door more than the glass in my hand, listening for footsteps that never came. The bartender asked if I was waiting for someone. I said no too quickly. At home, I noticed changes. Small things at first. A mogi moved slightly from where I left it. A window unlocked when I was sure I'd locked it. I blamed routine fatigue, my mind reaching for meaning, until I found the book. It was on my shelf, tucked between two I'd read years ago. I didn't remember buying it. Inside the cover, written neatly, was a sentence. Still, just one night. I didn't tell Maya. Primera, Hua, Entetu. But the thought of saying it out loud made it feel real in a way I wasn't ready for. Instead, I started adjusting my life. Leaving work later, taking longer routes home. Sleeping with the lights on. I told myself I was being cautious. Deep down, I knew I was waiting. The messages started without warning. No number, no profile picture. Who's towards? You're quieter lately. I stared at my phone, my chest tight, my fingers numb. I typed back, erased it, then typed again. What is this? The reply came instantly. She never threatened me. That was the worst part. Se observed, commented on things she shouldn't know, what I ordered for lunch. When I skipped the gym, the way I hesitated before unlocking my door. It felt intimate. Invasive, like someone gently pressing a thumb against a bruise to see if it still hurt. I tried to stop responding. For 3 days, I ignored every message. On the 4th night, there was a knock at my door. I didn't open it. I stood there, holding my breath, listening. After a moment, My phone buzzed. "You don't have to hide." The message read, "I already know where you are." That was when I realized the truth. This wasn't about desire anymore. It was about attention, control, the slow, careful dismantling of distance until I couldn't tell where my thoughts ended and hers began. She didn't want me to chase her. She wanted me to stay exactly where I was. I stopped trying to understand how Clara knew things. The question changed on its own. He'd become a why me? Why that night? We know. I searched her name online. Slowly. Carefully. Like I was afraid the act of looking might alert her. There were results. Too many. Different cities. Different faces. Different ages. Some nummy. Always the same phrasing in comments and forums. She said it was just one night. I found Jonah again by accident. He was sitting in a diner near the bar, staring into a cup of coffee he hadn't touched. When I said her name, his hand shook just enough to spill a drop onto the table. "She doesn't take things," he said quietly. "She replaces them." I asked him what he meant. He looked at me for a long time, then said, "She stays until you stop being yourself." Jonah told me what happened after she left him, not all at once. In fragments. How his routines changed, how his thoughts stopped feeling private, how he began questioning decisions he knew he'd already made. "She never forced anything," he said. "That's how she wins." I asked him how it ended. He laughed softly. "I noticed I didn't miss her anymore," he said, "and that scared me." That night, I dreamed of the apartment. Not her apartment. Mine. Only it wasn't arranged the way I'd left it. Furniture shifted. Objects placed more carefully than I ever had. She was there, standing in the doorway, watching me like a guest who'd arrived early. "You're almost done," she said. I asked her with what. Sismil, resisting. I woke up to a message. "You've been doing so well." I didn't reply. Instead, I typed something I hadn't allowed myself to consider. "What do you want from me?" There was a long pause. Then, "Nothing you weren't already giving away." The truth came slowly. Clara didn't attach herself to people. She mirrored them. She learned patterns, habits, weaknesses that weren't obvious on the surface. She didn't create obsessions, she reflected it back, amplified, until it consumed everything else. By the time someone noticed, they were already hollowed out. Easier to leave. The last time I saw her, she didn't come close. She stood across the room, calm as always. "You'll be fine," she said. "You don't need me anymore." I asked her if any of it was real. She tilted her head. "It was real for you," she said. "That's always been enough." She left without saying goodbye. No note. No message. Just silenci. Weeks passed before I realized what she'd taken. Not my sleep. Not my peace. My certainty. Even now, when I catch my reflection in dark glass, I hesitate. Just for a moment, wondering if the thoughts forming in my head are still mine. I thought Clara was gone. That belief lasted until I started noticing the changes that weren't mine. My routines shifted without intention. Foods I disliked began appearing in my grocery bag. Music I'd never searched played automatically, as if suggested by someone who already knew my mood better than I did. Nothing dramatic. Nothing obvious. That was the point. I began finding traces of her in places she'd never been. A sentence in a book that felt written for me. A stranger using her phrasing in passing conversation. A pause in a voice that mimicked the way she used silence. It was as if Clara had learned how to exist indirectly. Not present, but everywhere. I finally understood something I'd missed before. Clara didn't attach herself to moments. She attached herself to transitions. People on the edge of change. People quietly dissatisfied. People who hadn't noticed how thin their sense of self had become. She arrived when identity was already loosening. She only finished the work. I met another woman who knew her. not Binami. By description. She didn't seduce me, the woman said, staring into her coffee. She studied me. The intimacy just made it easier. I asked how it ended. It didn't, she said. She stopped needing me. The realization came late, and all at once. Clara didn't stay until people broke. She stayed until they stabilized into something quieter. Less resistant, easier to shape. She didn't destroy lives. She edited them. One night, months later, my phone buzzed again. A single message. You're ready now. I didn't ask for what. I already knew. I saw her one last time in a crowded place. She looked different. Not older. Not younger. Adjusted. Her eyes lingered on me briefly, with something close to approval. You did well, she said softly. I asked if she'd ever come back. She smiled. I never left, she said. You just stopped noticing. As she walked away, I understood the final truth. Clara wasn't collecting people. She was cultivating versions of them, leaving behind individuals who would never quite trust their own thoughts again, and would pass that uncertainty on quietly, unintentionally, like an inherited habit. Some nights, when I catch myself hesitating before simple decisions, I wonder if she's still watching. Not to control, not to return, just to see if her work held. And somewhere, I know, another person is hearing her voice for the first time. Calm, intimate, reassuring, telling them it's just one night. A week passed without a word. Then, just after midnight, someone knocked on my door weakly, unevenly, like they might collapse if I didn't answer fast enough. When I opened it, Clara was standing there, soaked from the rain, shaking so hard she could barely stay upright. Her skin was burning. Her eyes unfocused. I didn't know where else to go, she whispered. That was the first time she ever admitted needing anything. I helped her inside, guiding her to the couch as her knees gave out. She smelled of rain and fever, her body radiating heat like it had nowhere else to release it. She tried to apologize. I stopped her. I pressed a cool cloth to her forehead. Her breathing slowed slightly, but she didn't let go of my wrist. Her grip was weak yet desperate. Don't leave, she said. As the night deepened, the fever came in waves. I stayed close, changing the cloth, murmuring reassurances I didn't know I had in me. At some point she reached for me again, this time pulling me closer, not out of fear, but need. Her head rested against my chest. Her breathing synced with mine. The distance she always kept was gone. She looked up at me, eyes glassy, vulnerable in a way I'd never seen. I was always able to leave, she said quietly. That's how I survived. Her fingers traced my arm slowly, almost unconsciously. But tonight, she continued, I don't want to. The confession hung between us, Evie. Intimate, irreversible. I carried her to the bed when she could no longer stand. The room was dim, quiet, wrapped in shadows and soft light. She curled toward me instinctively, seeking warmth. I stayed close, feeling the heat of her skin, the trust in her closeness. There was nothing rushed. Only Brit. Only touch meant to comfort. The night burned slowly. Sometime before dawn, her fever broke. She slept peacefully, her hand still resting against my chest. Fingers relaxed now, longer gripping, no longer afraid. When she woke, she didn't pull away. Sister Jade. And for the first time, Clara didn't watch me like a subject. She looked at me like someone who had decided to remain. Days passed without announcement. Not dramatic days, ordinary ones. The kind that quietly stack on top of each other until you realize you're living inside them. Clara stayed. Not because she asked to, but because neither of us suggested she leave. Mornings began with shared silence, coffee cooling between us. Her hair still loose from sleep, and she leaned against the counter like she belonged there. And somehow, she did. She learned my habits faster than I noticed hers. Which mug I reached for first. How I paused before answering messages, when I preferred quiet over conversation. In return, I learned the way she softened it in the early afternoon, how she liked windows open even when it was cold, how she relaxed when her back rested against my chest trust, given without words. It felt married in the smallest ways. Touch became constant, unannounced. Not urgent, not demanding. A hand on my arm when she passed, fingers brushing my neck as she leaned close to read something over my shoulder. The warmth of her body lingering long after she moved away. We didn't rush nights. We let them stretch head breaths, shed warmth, learning each other slowly, deliberately. It wasn't hunger. It was familiarity becoming desire. At night, we slept tangled without planning to. Her leg draped over mine, my hand resting at her waist, fingers curved like they'd always belonged there. Sometimes she traced idle patterns against my skin, half awake, as if memorizing me. Other times, she pressed closer, heat against heat, breathing deep and steady. The intimacy wasn't loud. It was confident. She stopped watching me. That was how I knew something had changed. No studying glances, no careful pauses. When she looked at me now, it was direct, unguarded, present. She laughed more easily, stayed through silences without filling them. When I caught her staring, she didn't look away. "I like this," she admitted once, quietly. Stalling. We moved like a couple who'd been together for years, cooking together, sharing space without asking, touching without explanation. There was a softness to it, a sense that we were tasting life through each other, discovering how comfort could feel just as intoxicating as mystery. For the first time, Clara wasn't leaving traces behind. She was building something. With me. Me. The empty morning. I woke to silence that felt wrong, not quiet, vacant. The kind that presses against your ears. The bed beside me was still warm, the sheets slightly folded where Clara always slept, one arm tucked under the pillow. For a moment, relief washed over me. She must be in the kitchen. She always woke before me. I called her name once. Tin again. Nothing answered. The apartment looked untouched. Her cup still sat by the sink, unwashed. Her coat hung where she'd left it the night before. Even her shoes were still by the door, aligned carefully like she always did. There were no signs of packing, no rush, no disturbance. It was as if she had simply stopped being there. I felt my chest tighten. I searched everywhere. The bathroom, the hallway, balcony. I checked the locks twice, then a third time, convinced I'd missed something obvious. My phone lay exactly where I'd left it. No messages, no missed calls, no note. She hadn't said goodbye. That was the part that scared me. Clara never left without intention. Hours passed without shape. I retraced our days, our conversations, searching for cracks I might have ignored. Every quiet laugh, every look that lingered too long. I replayed the way she'd held me the night before close. Unguarded, real. There was no warning. No sign she was preparing to disappear. My thoughts began folding in on themselves. I left the apartment and walked the streets like a man chasing an echo. Every dark-haired woman made my pulse spike. Every familiar pause in conversation felt like her voice returning. I checked the bar, the grocery store, places she'd mentioned casually, as if testing whether they might matter later. Nothing. By nightfall, exhaustion turned into panic. Back home, I sat on the bed we'd shared, gripping the sheets like they might explain something if I held them hard enough. My phone buzzed suddenly, sharp and cruel in the quiet. For a breathless second, I thought it was her. It wasn't it, just a notification. But beneath it something else, a time-stamped message draft. Unsent from name. It read only 4 words.
I didn't have time.
And nothing after.
Hi.
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 Hi. If you're wondering where Clara went, you're not alone. The story continues in part 2. Like and subscribe to be notified when the next chapter is released. Only here on What Really Happened.